Did the Detroit Pistons get exposed by the San Antonio Spurs and reveal that they need to add some shooting to their bench? We'll talk about it and break it down in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Khahil. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons for the last 4 years, been a credential media member now for the last 3 years. And I appreciate all of your guys' support who make Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. I also want to thank you guys for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in America. We all my colleagues here at Locked On, appreciate all of your guys' support. And before we get into today's episode, I actually have a super cool update to throw to you guys. You guys might, if you guys listen or watch on YouTube, or if you listen on podcast platforms, you might have seen a second episode yesterday, depending on when you listen to this. On Tuesday, that is. You may have seen a second episode wondering, okay, what's this? And didn't know what was happening. We have twice a week a new type of podcast episode coming to you guys that involves me, Jake Ripma, and former Detroit Piston and two-time NBA champion Lindsey Hunter. We'll be recording 2 episodes a week for you guys. It will be called the Locked On Pistons Squad Show, and you guys will be seeing it on Locked On Pistons feed, whether it be on YouTube or podcast platforms. If you were wondering what that was, that's what it is. It was a really cool first episode. I really enjoyed it. We talked about the Spurs game, the Ausar benching. Lindsey provided a lot of fun stories and callbacks to his time, so I think you guys would really enjoy it. If you were wondering what that was and maybe didn't give it a try because you didn't know what it was, go check it out. I think you guys would really like it. It's going to be 2 times a week. I think you guys will really like hearing from me, Jake, and obviously Lindsey Hunter. Coming up today is 9 to 5, a legit option the Pistons have to go to. We'll talk about that in the second segment. And then also, we got The Ringer updates, The Ringer rankings, I should say, of the NBA. The Pistons now have 4 players on the top 100. Where do they rank? We'll discuss it all coming up. But after the Detroit Pistons loss to the San Antonio Spurs, which I have to say this quickly before we even get to why I exactly wanted to talk about. Everyone who's freaking out, I need everyone to please calm down. Anyone who is freaking out and panicking after this loss, the Pistons were not going to win every game the rest of the year. They are going to lose some games. They'll lose probably a few more games. They'll probably lose to a few more bad teams. They're not going to win 66 games or whatever. Like that wasn't going to happen. And they played a very good team, a great team in San Antonio. And despite that, if you look at how the Pistons match up against all the other teams, the top 5 teams that have played against each other, the Spurs are at the top, they're 7-1. The Pistons are in second at 6-2. The other 3 teams, the Knicks are 2-5, Boston's 2-6, and OKC's 1-4. So yes, the Pistons lost to San Antonio. It was a tough loss. Cade didn't play that well. They'll get their rematch next week. We'll see if they're able to even it up. I think they'll play much better, and we'll see where they stack up. But so far this year, they weren't going to win every game, and they still have an incredible resume of beating very good teams. Just because they didn't beat the Spurs doesn't mean they can't beat good teams. They have one of the best records in the NBA against good teams. So just relax just a bit if anyone's panicking. It was a tough game, but let's chill a little bit. However, after the game, there's been a lot of talk about this game exposed the Pistons' lack of shooting. This game exposed that the Pistons need to do something with their rotation. They need to find a way to add shooting to their rotation. Do I agree with that statement? I somewhat do and somewhat really don't. I think what did the Pistons in against the Spurs, real quickly, is if you look in the way the Pistons are going to win, and this was an experiment, or you got the evidence, I should say, that's a better way of saying it, how they played in the first half versus second half. The way in which the Detroit Pistons are going to win games is that they have won games. And this is according to Data Baller. Great update. They had all these stats. But the Pistons rank number 1 in the amount of possessions they add or have more than their opponents per game. So the Pistons' way of winning is that they win the possession battle by forcing you into turnovers. They're going to get offensive rebounds. They're going to create extra possessions for themselves. And even if they're not maybe as efficient per possession, the fact that they're doubling up possessions means that they eventually catch up and they eventually will win that way. That's how the Pistons plan to win. That's how they've won all year. They haven't won behind shooting. That's their recipe to winning. And in this game against the Spurs, in the first half, they had 8 points off of turnovers. They had 12 fast break points. They forced the Spurs into quite a few turnovers. And you saw the game was 55-57. The Spurs were hot from deep, but the Pistons were turning them over. They were frustrating them a little bit, especially I think after that first 6 minutes or whatever. They started to frustrate the Spurs a little bit. They got more physical. And you saw the game get really close, and the game was really competitive. It was a great game. And then the second half, the Pistons couldn't score at all in fast break. They couldn't score at all off of turnovers. And the Spurs were forced to put them in the half, or force the Pistons into the half court. And they weren't able to win these margins. They weren't getting a ton of offensive rebounds. They only had 5 points off of turnovers in the second half. They only had 4 total fast break points. So if you were any team, if you're able to force the Pistons into the half court setting for an entire half, it's probably not going to go well for Detroit. They have to win their way. And they've done that most of the season. San Antonio was able to limit it in the second half. San Antonio's a great team. So I think that's the main reason, is that they weren't able to flex their strength on San Antonio.
Now, I wonder why that was. In the first half, they were able to. And in the second half, they weren't. I wonder what maybe changed. What rotation change maybe happened? What piece of evidence do we have now of 2 years of data that the Pistons force more turnovers, they get more fast break points, they win the possession battle? Whatever. We're not going to get into it again. But that's why I believe the Pistons lost. However, a lot of people are pointing to the shooting because obviously the Pistons are not that great of a shooting team. They shot 19% in this game. So now the question has been, should they play one of their shooters that is just rotting away on the bench? Should they play these guys? Can they make up for what's happening? I don't think it's as simple as that for a few reasons. One, I think some people out there, not everyone, but some people out there need to understand is the way in which JB Bickerstaff is looking at this team, and I think it's the correct way. For most of the time, there's sometimes we have some lapses, I think. But for the most part, all season, they've identified that the way this team's going to win is by going all in on their defense, by going all in on the margins, by going all in on forcing turnovers, winning the glass. They've identified that's how they're going to win. We're not going to have enough shooting. We're not going to have enough offense, but we do have enough defense to flex our muscle. And if we go all in on that, we'll win games. And that's worked out. I mean, they're first in the NBA right now, so it's worked out. The problem, if you start adding shooting, you're taking some people out the rotation. And for JB Bickerstaff, I imagine, and I think this is pretty clearly what the hesitation here is the trade-off you are taking for defense for offense by putting in whoever you want to say, and we'll get into some of the names, but the trade-off that you are making, is it going to be worth it? Are you going to lose too much in the defensive department? Is the person you're adding enough offense to where you can consistently feel confident they are making up that difference? If he doesn't, he's not going to make those moves because, yes, the Pistons may have nights where they don't shoot well. That's fine. That's how they look at it. We may not shoot 20%. That's how they look at it. Who cares? As long as we win our margins, we'll win anyways. And we've seen that all year. Even despite the fact that they haven't been able to get a bunch of threes up, the fact they haven't been able to make a ton of threes, they still win because they win the margins that they want to win. They win the way they want to. And JB, I feel, has a hesitation to mess with that algorithm, to mess with that formula, because he doesn't believe that the offense that he would then be adding in is going to make up enough of the shooting ground to make up for the potential loss in defense that he's making. I think that's clearly what's happening here. I think the other thing about this is the people that everyone or a lot of people are suggesting, they're not trustworthy enough for JB to do this, it seems. So I want to start with Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser had back-to-back games at the end of December and to start the year. He had a 19-point game, 19-5 game against the Lakers. He had an 18-4 game against the Miami Heat. He made 3 total threes in those games, or how many threes? No, 8 total threes in those games. He played incredibly well in those 2 games. The next 12 games after that he's played, since then, he's shooting 33% from deep. And he's been inconsistent after that when he's been given a chance. So is his shooting, can JB trust that the shooting actually is going to be there? Because the problem is, I understand everyone wants to take Caris LeVert out. If you take LeVert out and you put Sasser in, you're doing it because you expect a lot more scoring.
if you're not getting that scoring from Sasser and it doesn't happen or it's not consistent, now you're playing two miniature guys in Danis and Marcus. And if you're not getting the shooting upgrade, now you're going to get attacked on defense. And you're not going to get those extra turnovers because Sasser is just smaller than LeVert and doesn't have the size, the length, all that. So that's what I think JB's looking at it like. If you look at Chaz Lanier, I've liked what we've seen from him. Almost every time he's been able to touch the floor, like I think he's a very smart player. I trust that he would be, I trust that on a larger sample size, he'll be a very good shooter because he was such a great shooter for such a long time in college. I think that will translate. But so far this year, despite us liking what we've seen from him, he's only shooting 33% from deep. So again, it's the same thing. The shooting that the Pistons have, is it actually trustworthy shooting? Is it actually going to be shooting that they bring into the rotation? Are they actually going to see an improvement in the three-point shooting? Are they actually going to? Or is it just hypothetical? I think that's what JB's juggling here, is that he doesn't feel like he really has real shooters on the bench that he can trust to throw out there that will consistently hit threes and space the floor. And if you can't do that, why even bother with it at all? Just continue to go all defense, continue to go with this formula, and it may look ugly at times, but we're going to win most of the time because we'll win in the margins. And then Kevin Huerter as well. I think Huerter probably has the biggest argument to play because you could make the argument that so far this year, how he played with the Bulls, you could make the argument that he was better with the ball in his hands than LeVert has been this year. Like, he might not have the tween step back every now and then that LeVert can do, but most of us don't want to see that anyways. You could probably make the argument that Huerter has been a better on-ball player than LeVert this year before he came to the Bulls, and he has a longer history of being a good shooter. I know he hasn't shot well this past year, but he has a longer history of being a good three-point shooter, and you hope that he could get back to that. He also has size, and teams guard him like a shooter still. They don't just leave him. So the one spot here that I could see the argument being pretty strong with is, why are you not giving Huerter a chance over LeVert? You keep the size, you keep the length. He provides some on-ball juice as a playmaker, and he's a better finisher at the rim than LeVert is. He gets there. Like, why is he not at least getting a chance to run over LeVert? So that's the one counter that I will agree with. The other two, I understand why JB's not going to them. Hypothetically, if they actually do shoot 38, 39% from three, then it's like, yeah, absolutely, you need that shooting. But if they're going to come into the game and 3 out of 5 games, they're shooting 1 of 3 or 1 of 4, and they're not giving you the defense that everyone else, that maybe Javonte or Karras could give you, or, pick your poison. It's I understand why he's looking at it like he's not going to be a net positive for what we're doing. I get that. The Huerter over LeVert, though, I do think there's some credibility to that, and I think we all just kind of have to accept that JB's going to play Karras LeVert. Karras could shoot 0 of 20, and he's going to play Karras. So I think that at that point, it's just a losing battle. But that's where I'm at with it. I think it's a good idea. I understand it. I just don't know how real it actually is. And I don't think JB, the way he looks at this, is willing to try that. I don't, at least so far this year, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. Do you guys agree with me, disagree with me? More so, do you agree or disagree with how JB's looking at it? Because I strongly believe this is exactly what JB is thinking. Let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. Coming up, should the Detroit Pistons give 9 to 5 or make it a legit option for the Detroit Pistons moving forward the rest of the season? We'll talk about it, break it down coming up. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel has given you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, the MVP, the Sixth Man of the Year, Rookie of the Year, whatever it is. It adds the extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but it could also send you to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. That is FanDuel. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And if you haven't already, check out the Everydayer Club where you'll get access to a Discord server. You also get Locked On Pistons free with no ad. I mean, we're always free, but with no ads, that is. One free, ad-free listen. Compatible with all podcast platforms. You can go over to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club to check that out, or click the link in the description down below. We're starting to see more and more 9 to 5 minutes over the last 2 weeks or so. Should we see even more of it moving forward? I think the answer is unequivocally yes. I think we should see even more of it. But before we talk about why I believe we should see even more of it, I want to give you guys the data on how it worked, or how it has worked so far. Ausar and Ron Holland have played 200 minutes together so far. The Pistons have won these minutes by 18.1 points per 100 possession. They have a defensive rating with these two on the floor of 93.9. I'm going to say it again. They have a defensive rating with these two on the floor of 93.9. That is utterly insane. Don't even know how that's possible. It's crazy. And an offensive rating of 112.0 in 200 minutes. And over the last few games, like I mentioned, we're starting to see JB test with it a little bit more, which I'd really like to see. But I think they should try to buy into it even more, especially now. I understand last night's game, or the last game against the Spurs, is tough to do this with because we know he benched Ausar because of the whole thing we talked about last episode with the miscommunication, whatever. So it's tough to say that for this game because whatever. But based off what we just talked about in the first segment, I think this year's Detroit Pistons, the 2025-2026 Detroit Pistons, what some fans need to understand and just come to grips with is that this year's team is not going to shoot the ball well. They are not going to be a good three-point shooting team. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter who you play. This team is not going to be a good three-point shooting team. At most, maybe they get up to 24th, 23rd or something like that. But they're not going to be a good three-point shooting team. This personnel on this roster, they don't have trustworthy shooters anywhere outside of Duncan Robinson. And I understand it can get really ugly because of that. I mean, in the game against San Antonio, Duncan Robinson hit 3 threes. He took 11 threes. You got Ron Holland taking 6 because he's the only other guy really that can get volume, or he can't get volume up, but teams are giving him threes and he's getting them up because he's wide open. But you can't have you really don't want to have Ron Holland being one of your high volume 3-point shooters. Every shot he takes from beyond the arc, the defense is saying, yes, we just won that possession. So I understand that when you look at this and say, man, if Duncan doesn't hit 7-8 threes, we're just not going to see double-digit threes made in a game. You can't do. I understand it 100%. But that's what this team is just going to be this year. They're not addressing it this year. They could have done it at the deadline. I think they should have, but they didn't. They didn't address it at the deadline. They're going to address it in the offseason. They'll add more shooting. But this year's team, they don't have a lot of shooting. That's just what this team's going to look like. So, like we were talking about in the first segment, what they then need to do is just double, triple, and quadruple down on what this team's defensive or strength of this team, which is defense. They need to triple down on how they want to win these games. Just go all in on it. And how they win games is forcing turnovers, getting stops, whether that means scoring in fast break situations off of turnovers or getting stops and then being able to push and get into early transition. That is how the Detroit Pistons are going to win games. That is their only chance to win games. And the two guys that generate that more than anybody is Ausar and Ron. So if you play them two together, probably not going to hit a bunch of threes. You might get, they actually do generate, like if you look at Ausar's on off, they shoot better 3-point percentage with him on the floor versus off. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you get threes up easier in transition. So you're able to find Duncan open out the wing when they're pushing in transition off a steal, off a turnover, whatever, like that. But you're not going to generate probably a bunch of threes in the half court unless Cade and Duncan are hot that night. Probably not. But what you will do, you will get stops nonstop. Yeah, teams just won't score. And then that will immediately trigger you into your best offense. That is the Pistons' best success or best chance at success. I'm not, and I know I'm arguing pretty strongly here. I'm not suggesting they should play them 20 minutes a game. That's not what I'm saying. But continue to play these stretches. Up it a little bit more as the season goes on. If it continues to provide the results we've seen so far. I mean, they're dominating teams. They're dominating teams by 18 points when they play. Like, they're just obliterating them. So continue to play them in these stretches. Continue to improve or up the minutes that they get to play together as long as it continues to look good. Again, you're probably going to see some ugly half-court possessions. It's going to happen. But you're going to generate, these two guys generate your best offense more than anybody else does. So play them some more. And I think JB's realized that. I mean, like I said, we've seen them play more together the last 4 or 5 games than we have at any other point. So I think maybe we're heading down that path already, which I think is a good read by JB here. If the Pistons had another option on the bench, if they had another option where it was like, it goes back to my argument where JB sat Ausar at the end of the game in New York, or when he sits him late to try to go offense. The problem is when you try to do they don't provide enough shooting, you can't play them together. The problem with that argument is the opposite side of that is insinuating that if you don't play Ausar or Ron or whatever, is that in their place, you are getting this much better offensive player and they're improving the offense. That's not the opposite point of this. That's not the opposite result, because who you're bringing in is not providing much enough offensively to actually provide a net positive. Every single time the Pistons have went, I mean, yesterday in the second half against San Antonio, they went to a 4-guard lineup and tried to go all offense, and they got blitzed off the floor. No, there's no combination that the Pistons have on this person with this personnel in this roster. There's not any combination they have that they can go all offense and it will work out. Because you could take the 5 best offensive players on this roster. You just want to go 5 best shooters and just put them on the floor. They are, one, not good enough shooters to actually do it. They're not going to generate enough good shots anyways, and they're not going to get stops. So you're not actually going to improve your half-court offense. And this time, and by doing that, you're not generating what is your best offense, which is fast break and transition. So all of that to say, I do think we'll continue to see more of Ron and Ausar, especially if Ron plays how he did yesterday. He needs to play more. If Ron's playing like that, because Ron has been more inconsistent this year. The highs, I think, have been much higher than last year. I think you've seen a lot of highs, but you've also seen some lows from him. So he's been a little inconsistent. But when he's having games like the one he had against the Spurs, or the game against Washington, or the game even, what was it, earlier in the year, against Houston, like, when he's playing like that, as long as Ron is playing this well, and Ausar is also being aggressive like he was in this game against the Spurs, when they're both playing well, the option isn't, okay, now we have to pick one of them to play. No, that's like the perfect situation. When both of them are playing well and being aggressive offensively, that's when you say, perfect, they're hitting on all cylinders, now we play them together. Because you need them both on the floor at that point. Now, I get it if Ron is really struggling, if Ausar is really struggling, I get it, but their minutes are dominating, and especially in a game like the one against the Spurs, when they're both playing really well, that should be like a big smile moment when it's like, okay, this is where we can take advantage. They're both feeling it. They're both playing really well. They're both impacting the game. Let's get some minutes in here, see how much we can do here. That's what I think should happen. So, and like I said, we're already seeing more of it. So I'll assume that we're going to see even more of it as the season goes on. But so far, these minutes, I understand that the shooting point is very obvious. It's very obvious. But I think their minutes together so far should make a lot of Pistons fans very excited for the future and very high on what these guys can become. Ron's in his second year, Ausar's in his third year. They're both still developing, and they just dominate in their minutes. They're just dominating in their minutes. They do what they need to do. You should feel very excited about this future. And if one of them develops a three-point shot, most likely Ron. But if one of them do develop a three-point shot, I mean, that's the wing pairing of the future. You're playing them 30 minutes together a game. And I don't know how any team would be able to score on them. I just don't know what would happen. But in the meantime, as they continue to play better, as they continue to play well, up the minutes, they generate your best offense. They play to your style, double, triple, quadruple down on it, because you don't have any other better options when it comes to offense and shooting that make up the difference. So that's where I'm at with it. Hopefully we see even more of it against OKC tomorrow night. I think it would be really good against them. So let me know, comment section down below, or over on Twitter at Khahil. Coming up, we got some new Ringer NBA rankings. We have now 4 Pistons ranked in the top 100. We'll break it down and figure out who is the mystery 4th guy that joined the 3 other Pistons that have always been on there all year. We'll talk about it coming up. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to still fill sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is the job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Check out the Everydayer Club if you'd like. And also make sure you check out the new Locked On Pistons Squad show that we recorded. That's going to be happening 2 times a week. This one that was posted on Tuesday was a lot of fun. Again, it's hosted by Jake Ritma. And then also me and Lindsey Hunter. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I think you guys would really like it as well. The Ringer has a new list coming, or that came out, a new rankings. They do it a few times a year. I think maybe like 3 or 4 times a year they update their rankings. They have a new list that came out. And this time there are 4 Detroit Pistons on the list. So I'll go ahead and start who obviously ranked the very highest, and we'll work our way down. Obviously, at the very top, or not the very top, but the top on the Pistons list, they have Cade at 9, coming out of the last few days. I believe earlier he was, I believe in the last rankings he was, I think he was like 7 or 8. I think he was around here, and this is basically where he was. Oh no, he was at 9 last time too. So fair enough, yeah. So he was at 9 the last time they did this update. He stays right here at 9. What they wrote about his midseason review, I'll just hit on a few things here. The Pistons have a real shot at finishing the season with the league's best record, and we all know who stirs the drink in Detroit. Cunningham's game has always been predicated on the pick and roll, but how he scores out of the two-man game has leveled up considerably. They've talked about how Cade has never had this much influence over the defense, and while his overall three-point numbers don't reflect his dramatic improvement, he's hitting pull-up threes out of the pick and roll at the same clip at frequency as Jamal Murray and Tyrese Maxey. So I'm really happy they included that, because I've talked about this a lot on Twitter. I think we've talked about on the podcast a few times as well. We probably haven't dived into it enough. But Cade's three-point numbers are down. If you looked at his pull-up three-point shooting, of everyone who takes at least 3 attempts, at least as of last week, he was around like 17th out of 60 players in percentage. So he's been hitting consistently at a high clip, pull-up threes all year. It's just been the catch and shoot numbers that were so bad at the beginning of the year. He was like 10% the first 2 months, and it really crashed his efficiency. If you're shooting his normal catch and shoot percentages, where he was really good on all of his career, we'd be looking at a crazy efficient season for him. But Cade's at 9. I don't think this is I don't think this is disrespectful. I think this is right around where he's at. If I had to rank the NBA players in the league, me personally, I probably would have him around 7 or 8. That's why I probably would have him ahead of Kawhi. I know Kawhi's been absolutely insane, but I'd have him ahead of Kawhi simply because of the playmaking difference. and the health and availability. I know Kawhi's been utterly insane this year. I get that. But the playmaking and the overall impact, I think he has a higher impact right now because of the playmaking aspect, and also he's just more available. But Kawhi's been so crazy this year that I'm not going to sit here and spit at somebody who has him one spot ahead. I actually was pretty shocked that they had Steph ahead of him. They had him at 8. I was shocked about that because I know Steph's been really good. I mean, all these guys are great, but Steph honestly hasn't been as good as maybe he. I mean, obviously he's 37, but I just feel like he's been better than Steph this year. I'm not gonna lie. I think he's just been flatly better than Steph this year. And I love Steph Curry. He's one of my favorite players ever. I was kind of shocked about that one. But other players they had ahead of him, Anthony Edwards, Giannis, like I'm not mad at that. Luka, not mad. Like Wemby, SGA, Jokic. I'm not too mad at all this. I think Cade was anywhere on my list, somewhere between 7 and 8. So him at 9, it's not crazy to me. The next player on the list for the Detroit Pistons is Jalen Duren, who has skyrocketed up this. He was at 83 in October, 43 in November, 34 in December, 31 in January, and now this month he is 26. So he has soared. He has made big jumps across the board on this list. 26, honestly, for me, that was probably even richer than I would have put him. I think I said like last week, I think he was like a top 30 to 35 player. So that's where I had him. They're slightly higher than even I had him at. So, I mean, but Jalen Duren's had a fantastic season. So I'm cool with him being here. I mean, he's ahead of Lauri Markkanen, Bam, De'Aaron Fox, J-Dub. He's ahead of Cat. Like, he's ahead of some pretty big names. So he's having a really good year. And just to read part of what they said about him, they said, the scary part of Duren's breakthrough fourth season, other than his ability to mush a man with the force of 1,000 suns, is that this is only the beginning of things. They talk about how great of a lob threat he is, and how much he's improved, and the rookie extension that's coming for him this offseason. So I'm happy with where Duren is. Again, like I said, I had him 30 to 35 last week. They had him at 26. So obviously they're even higher than I was on the season he's had. They showed him a lot of respect. Ausar Thompson is next. He's at 73. Here are his rankings so far throughout the year. At the beginning of the year, to start the year, he was at 91. He soared up to 70 at the end of November. He fell to 73 in December. He fell to 75 in January and jumped back up to 73 in February. So they believe he's been really hovering around a top 70 player. Before the year, I believe I had him around like 67 or 66, somewhere around there. So this is right in line with where I had him coming into the year. I think there's an argument for some of the guys that are ahead of him that he should be ahead of. I'm not going to sit here and make the argument because it's not like I'm not moving him up 20 spots or anything. I'd move him up maybe a few spots, give him to 68. There's a few guys here like in the 60s I think he's just better than. But the regression in on-ball usage I think has played a part in why he's fallen a little bit. They talk about how great of a defender he is here. And they talked about how the flashes offensively with the ball in his hands make you believe that it could be some crazy stuff that ends up happening. But right now it's been too much of a flash and not enough consistency with it. So he's right around here. Completely understand that. I think this is a fair ranking for Ausar. Again, like I said, I probably would have him like 68 or something, somewhere around there. There's a few. I value defense more than everyone else. So a lot of these offensive guys are like really high. I wouldn't have, like, Trae Young, I would have him even lower. Josh Giddey, I would have, not lower than, I'm not saying all these guys would be lower than Ausar. I'm saying, like, some of these guys, they rank high. Like, Josh Giddey, I wouldn't have it, top 60 player. I don't know. But this ranking for Ausar, I think is fair. And then joining them, I think this is the first time he's ever been on this list. Oh, no, he was on it last year, or last month. Did I miss last month? I don't remember seeing him ever on here. But Stu joins him at 96. This year is the first year he's ever been on this top 100 list. And I'm really happy to see Stu kind of getting like this national recognition. I know it's not ESPN, but the Ringer's pretty huge. It is a national outlet. And seeing them give credit to Stu and having him in the top 100, I think that's really cool to see. He's been one of the best defenders in the league this year. He's been so impactful in the Detroit Pistons. And he just really, he's the culture. He's the soul of the team. And what he's been able to do protecting the rim consistently all year, and the amount of minutes that he plays, the average 1.7 blocks a game, he's improved as a finisher around the basket as well. Like, Stu's been great, and I'm happy. If there was a fourth player that should be on this list, it definitely was Stu, I think. So I'm happy with most of these rankings. I don't think any of these rankings were disrespectful. I don't think any of these rankings were out of bounds. I think all of these players are right around where I would have them, at least on this list. Maybe Cade one spot higher. Duren, I had him top 30, 35, so they really did him a good some justice. I'd have Ausar maybe like 2 to 3 spots higher. Stu, I mean, he's in the 90s. I think this is, like, saying VJ Edgecombe is better than him, I think it's a little strong, like, to be honest. But I think this is where he belongs as well. So all those years that the Pistons just had nobody in the top 100 and only one player at times, the Pistons now have 4. And it's all of their young guys. It's everyone that they've drafted and developed, and they're leading the way for this season. It's crazy to see, and they're getting the respect from the national media. So let me know in the comment section down below. Do you actually think there maybe should have been someone else on the list? I don't think so. I can't think of someone else I think should have been top 100. But if you think so, let me know. Also, if you disagree with some of these placements, let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.